I'm assuming I should ask before we start. We're reviewing the theatrical version.
Well, we're going to definitely talk
We're
about
going
it.
to talk about that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Definitely.
like because that's my thesis is that I really like the theatrical version just as it is, but the existence of the extended cut allows for me to have a conversation that like, well, what things should have come from the theater or from the extended, because I think the extended is too long, but there are definitely things I like in it more. And I have like my thoughts on like the different types of things that are in that extended cut. So
You what? No, never.
I know.
Welcome to Certain POV's Another Pass podcast with Case and Sam, where we take another look at movies that we find fascinating but flawed. Let's see how we could have fixed them.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to Another Pass podcast. I'm Case Aiken, and as always, I am joined by my co-host, Sam Alisea.
Hi.
And today we're moving away from the way we have opened up this round of episodes, talking a lot about anthropomorphized animals, and instead we're going to talk about something completely different today. Today we are talking about a weird, unique movie. We're talking about Tom Hanks's only directorial feature. We are talking about That Thing You Do, and to have a conversation about this love letter to 60s rock, we are joined by one of the hosts of Jukebox Vertigo. We have Keith here.
Hello, everybody.
Keith, welcome to Another Pass. We've been meaning to get you on for so long. I'm glad to finally get you here.
I'm excited to be here. I really like this show. Some people might know I used to be on a movie podcast and I miss reviewing movies. And I've done that with you on occasion, which is a lot of fun. And every chance I get, I will always take to talk about movies. I love them.
Yeah. And this is a good one for us to talk about because it's a movie. I really like when we talk about movies that are good, but have things that I have a jumping on point for how we can converse about it. Because That Thing You Do, I love. I think it's a great movie. I mean, it's not a perfect movie. I don't think anyone ever would have really said that. But it had such a catchy lead song. The rest of the soundtrack is a banger. You know, the stars, like rewatching it, it's like, oh, right. Like, because like literally I started the movie and I remember thinking, oh, right. Tom Everett Scott's girlfriend in this is someone who's big. Who is it? Who is it? Who is it? And then Charlize Theron.
Yeah, I was actually like, she's in, like when I saw her name in the credits, I was like, she's in this? And then like as soon as she popped up, I was like, oh, right.
Right.
Yeah, she was in this. Yeah.
Like, and then if you watch the extended cut, and I watched both for this episode, there's even more people that are like that. So it's a great cast. There's a lot of really good things going on, but there is that extended cut. And I think the extended cut is really interesting also. I think that the extended cut is a bit bloated from the perspective of like, if this was what had been put out in theaters, we would have been like, fine, yeah, it's a little long. Like that versus the movie that we got in theaters is, I think, very tight. But the one area where it kind of falters is that it's like overly tuned in terms of implying a lot of relationships, like, but not necessarily providing as many of the character details. And so like in a vacuum, either of them are perfectly fine. And I'm kind of intrigued about discussing where it's different and what kind of things could have worked for the theatrical cut, because it's also like a really tight 90-minute movie. So, you know, like like, what are you going to do with it? But I also just like talking about this movie because it's one that feels kind of like a lot of people like it. Like they may not love it, but a lot of people like really like it. Like my parents really like it. You know, it was a movie that was in rotation because it was like, oh yeah, it's like it's nostalgia bait for boomers. And like with that 30-year cycle, it came out in the 90s, looking at the 60s. And those of us who were children of the 90s were subjected to it. And so we're like, oh yeah, this is great. Because it's exactly like it's what we think of when we try to think of the early 60s.
Right. I mean, I really enjoyed this movie. It was early on because I wasn't really exposed to music very thoroughly as a child, which is weird because I have a music podcast. But three things happened at once in my childhood that kind of opened up the world of music. I had a teacher who was an amazing teacher, Mr. Greg Jacobs, who's actually a recording artist. And he taught a class called Modern American Culture. And he taught me about all the music from 1900 forward. And that's when music kind of opened up to me. The second thing was my parents got out their vinyl collection and I got to discover some of the most amazing 60s and 70s and even some 80s artists. And the final thing is there were several really good movies in the 90s about music, and this is one of them. I absolutely loved this movie as a kid. I thought it was really catchy. I've always had a weakness for this era of music too. Like I think it's a very pure, like sounding music, but if you know about how the music industry works, it's also one of the most corrupted times of music. So it's really interesting to learn about that. And we'll get into it, but I just love this cast. I love every person on this cast. So yeah, it's I you cannot say this is a bad movie, to respond to kind of what Case is saying. This is a good movie, but it is not perfect. It's like a car that runs perfectly fine, but could use a tune-up. It could run a little better. And I think that's kind of the angle I'm going at.
Yeah, it's kind of like a car where you can hear the gears shift and they tell you nothing is wrong. but it's really loud and it makes you uncomfortable every time you like switch into reverse and you hear a click sound.
Exactly. Yeah. It's just a little change to make it perfect. Just, I will say, I mean, obviously Tom Hanks is an amazing Hollywood icon. For this to be an initial directing role, kind of nailed it. Like, I'm sure he had a lot of resources, but man, he nailed it. So
yeah, that's a big thing I wanted to talk about just in the general discourse of this movie. Like, this is such a Tom Hanks baby. And it's like, it's the kind of effort that I know people who have done, like, here's their magnum opus of everything that, where they're doing all these efforts and they're teamed up with people are coming on, but it's their baby at every point of the way. Like, he wrote this movie, he directed this movie, he is one of the stars, he is the central person on every single poster. Like, this is the movie that Tom Hanks just had like welling up inside him for a couple of years, and that he like finally exploded out. And then he doesn't direct another movie. Like, it's that part I find like just fascinating. This is
the one story Case. Like, he had one story to tell. He wrote that story. He's fine. He's good. He has a regular version, an extended version. What more do you want? Huh?
Yeah. Well, and like the movie is like super Tom Hanks because he's written other things. He just hasn't been like he hasn't been the everything as he is for this.
Right.
And this movie is like the most Tom Hanks movie that could exist. Like, I love when you get to them on the late night show at the end of the movie, and like one of the other acts is a real astronaut played by Bryan Cranston, but a real astronaut,
right?
Like, who comes on to like promote like NASA, and like, well, that's a Tom Hanks move right there.
I think my last rewatch, I was kind of like, no, this is very strange because they take a lot of painstaking detail to make this our actual world, but other things, I'm like, is this an Elseworld? Like it felt weird to me. Like, it is literally like they reference the Beatles. They have an actual astronaut. There's a lot of things that are very factual in this, but then also this happened, and I thought that was just so funny. It's just kind of like, I know there's obviously movies based on like the real world and reference real world things, but for some reason it clicked with me that it was kind of like, this is an Elseworld. Like, I don't know why that world popped into my head. Like,
I love that you say that because I had the exact same thought, but I was thinking of it more like a Astro City style thing, or this is also my particular nerd itch, which is that I love learning about things by way of analogs for them. And so where it's like, okay, here's us learning about the music scene in the United States in the 60s, where we have this band that is this amalgam of all these different things. Like there's shades of the Beatles in it, but there's also shades of the Beach Boys. There's like the fact that thing you do is like, so it is a song that became a hit by virtue of the drummer coming in and being so on top of it. Makes me think of like how Wipeout was originally like a drum exercise because they needed to fill in their B-side. Right. And it was like, okay, cool. We just jam out real quick. And then that turned into a huge hit. Like, it felt like it's Tom Hanks thinking back on the music scene of the early 60s and creating this amalgamation of all these things about it to tell the story that is just like like the example of the one hit wonder.
Yeah. And I do like that pretty heavy handed. Oh, one hit wonders. Like,
yeah,
I like that that's a very like, it's a little on the nose, but I enjoyed that, it also, real quick, I'll throw this out and then I definitely want to hear what you want to say. The other thing, because you mentioned those bands, it also, to me, references a lot of bands that don't get talked about, like bands like the Turtles, who did like Happy Together, and they did other stuff, but ask anybody a Turtles song, that's the one they're going to know.
Right.
And, literally a one-hit wonder. And there's like a billion of those in the 60s. And I think that's really cool to kind of like, this is an homage to them. That's one of the things I really like about that. So, yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you. I was going to say, because you said that was really heavy-handed. There's a lot of like heavy-handed things that happen in this film. And a couple of characters that are kind of like, you should do this, child. You know, this is not a movie with subtlety. It is fun. There's a lot of great music. The characters are great. The acting is wonderful. Subtlety is not nuanced subtlety. That's not what this movie is at all. At all. Like in any way. Like Tom Hanks' character basically at the end, like gives you, like even in the theatrical version, gives you a summary of what the roles and archetypes each of the people in the band are represent. He's the fool.
This is your 5-man band. These are your Power Rangers. So So technically Jimmy is the Red Ranger, but he's actually playing the role of the Lancer to Guy, who's the Black Ranger on this one.
The fool, the artist, and the smart one. You know, like it's just.
Well, and Faye.
And
she's something special, isn't she? Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Go get her, boy.
I mean, the movie basically concludes with Lamar looking at the camera and winking, basically.
Right. Oh, okay. So, all right. Thank you. So Lamar is the thing I was working towards. And that, so in terms of anything in this movie that I would actually remove from the theatrical cut, Lamar is the one that I think about. I'm not positive how I would do it because he's charming, but he is a mystical Negro.
Here's the thing. He is, and he's inappropriate. Like, I get it, but I love Lamar. He's so charming. Like, I'm like, screw it. He knows the best jazz spots. Okay, you need the Lamar in there, at least to a nod that he would be the person that knows where the right jazz. That is a correct read on that. Okay, you cannot have a white guy tell him where the real jazz is. Like, true. I'm sorry, you need Lamar in there for at least that. You know, Lamar's intuitive. He knows that Faye needs help. He's wonderful. I love Lamar. Leave him alone. He may be magical, but leave him alone.
I have a fix for Lamar, but I don't know if we're getting into fixes yet.
We'll get to that later.
I know that's usually later, but I actually have a really good fix for Lamar, I think.
Okay. So. Yeah, because we'll have to talk about it because, like, again, he's super charming as a character, but there was a spot where I'm like, oh, yeah, like him ending the movie as being like, and that's the moral of the story, wink, or whatever. Like, the way that it kind of ends almost makes you feel like he should be throughout more of the movie instead of just the third act.
Yeah. Almost like he was a narrator the entire time, but he doesn't show up until 80% through the movie.
Right, exactly.
So it's weird.
The real friend was Lamar that you made along the way.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could almost do it like handoffs between the three acts because my read on this movie, and I haven't looked at like the timing on it, but Act 1 sort of concludes when their music gets played on the radio. And then Act 2 is them being taken under the wing, really, of Mr. White, and then like going on tour. And then Act 3 is when they fly to LA and everything from there.
Yeah, and it is good. I again, we're not into correct fixes yet, but I do have a few issues with that flow. I did also want to talk about my boy Ethan Embry playing Mr. Tobias Player. Which he did an interview saying that he believes the character's first name is Tobias because the bass player never gets a name.
And he's credited as TB Player.
Which is amazing. He's like, doesn't he look like a Tobias in that interview? It's so funny. I really love Ethan Embry. It's funny because I actually recommended another movie to Case a couple weeks ago. I'm like, hey, did you guys ever do this movie? And he's like, no, I'd be down. And then I realized, oh, there's like 3 people in this movie that are also in that movie. I was like, and Ethan Embry is also one of those people. I think he's really good and he's a very, very funny actor. And I don't think he really ever got the shot he deserved. I mean, Can't Hardly Wait.
Oh, you know? I mean, we've talked about it off mic, Can't Hardly Wait, or our love of it. I'm positive, or we've both said things on podcasts and yelled at each other across the internet because Can't Hardly Wait is a movie that I love, and like I fully feel that it was butchered in the edit and should have been like a much bigger like cult classic than it was.
Yeah, and then I mean. We want to talk about the cast a bit more. I got to talk about Steve Zahn. This movie,
oh my god,
this movie made me a Steve Zahn fan. I've watched so many bad movies with Steve Zahn in it because of this movie. Because I'm like, well, he was great in That Thing You Do.
Yeah.
I actually tried to make a list of my top 5 favorite Steve Zahn quotes in this movie for this show. I couldn't quite narrow it down because I had like 8. But my top 3 are definitely, as in, I wonder what happened to the Oneaters.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I'm not here with these fellas. I got to pick that. It's so good. And when they're on the radio and Guy's like, yeah, we're pretty crazy in here. EPA goes, there was this one time where we stayed up way past midnight, and he couldn't even finish his own joke.
Yeah.
Right.
Like those three right there are just absolutely incredible. The writing where it is very obvious, whoever's responsible for writing his lines, A+, give that person an Oscar, because that was just such great comedic writing. I loved it. And great delivery, of course.
And my understanding is that Zahn was one of the first that they cast. So like in a lot of ways, like the band is like kind of being built out. I think it was Zahn, and then what is it, Jonathan Jimmy, who plays Jimmy. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That those were like the first two, and then they started kind of building out from there. And that dynamic, I think, like all of a sudden you could see like, all right, this is how they feel, who they need, because like Zahn just nails that goofball role so well. But he feels like Johnny Storm, you know, like it's like this perfect, like he loves fast car music and like is so excited about everything. But he's also he is kind of like the mortar that keeps everything together in this band, because like he's the one that brings Guy onto it. Like he's the one who vouches for Guy's take on like doing it faster and like and really kind of pushing them forward, like getting them to stop overthinking situations, and often is the one to kind of sort of stop the fights, like it, you know, like, for what it's worth.
He's a chaotic mediator.
Yeah, he's Michelangelo.
Yes,
he's definitely the one who seems to have the best relationship with all three members of the band.
Yeah,
and like I think, in my opinion, he's the only one I think is actually friends with the bass player. Like personally, just from my context, there's not a lot of like text for that, but subtext. I also think he's by far the one that likes Jimmy the most. Like, because Jimmy's pretty unlikable. So
yeah.
I mean, not counting Faye, of course. But yeah, he's really integral to it. And I really like Steve Zahn. And again, I reference a lot of other YouTubers and reviewers and stuff constantly. And there's a review of Tall Girl from Netflix by Cosmonaut Marcus. They're talking about her dad, which is played by Steve Zahn. And they're like, this guy, and they don't know who it is, and it broke my heart. I was like, how do the current generation not know who Steve Zahn is? He's just so fun. But anyways, yeah, that's just my thing. But everybody's really good. And I mean, I have to give another shout out to Tom Everett Scott, though, because he should have been so much more, man. He had everything. Like, he had leading man, like, charisma, in my opinion. And I love how weird and awkward he is in this movie.
But also cool. Yeah, like, it's that nice guy cool. And a part of it helps that he's just tall. Like, you know, like when he goes to shake someone's hand, you're like, oh yeah, he's got big hands. Like you can really trust this guy because
he can reach tall shelves.
Yeah. But I totally agree. Like this, I feel like this is the movie that introduced me to him. But then he was in a bunch of stuff like right after it that I saw like just going to this whole like he should have been more. Dead Man on Campus, an American Werewolf in Paris. And then weirdly, he just like fell into this role of playing like grad students at colleges for a lot. Like he was in Van Wilder. Yeah. Like, and which is wild to me that this is like where I first saw him, because like he's like in that he's the youngest that I've ever seen him in this movie. Like, you know, give or take. I'm sure there's something that I've seen that was around the same time. But this is the movie I know him best. And he's such a baby face in this movie. And this is where I'm like, wait, but how old are these characters supposed to be? Because he served in the army. So is he like 25?
See, I was always confused by that line when I was stationed in Germany. I was like, was his family stationed? And then I'm like, well, no, his dad runs a furniture store. Why would he be in the... And I was like,
right.
That's so weird.
Yeah, it gives it off this idea that he's much older than the other young men in the van, which is possible. But yeah, that is a very weird line kind of like thrown in there.
Well, and Ethan Embry is so young when this movie was made. He was 17 when they cast him. So I don't know if he had turned 18 by the time they were filming or not, but like just a true child at this point, compared to like, I guess it could be like kind of like a Screech situation on Saved by the Bell. Like they're just, or Dustin Diamond. I mean, like the others are all very like, they're adults.
Yeah.
But they're doing like stuff at like the college. What was it? They're college girls at the talent show was one of the things they were talking about. Like,
yeah.
They're townies, I guess.
They do all drink alcohol. We know that much. They all drink.
Yeah.
So they're
right.
Unless they're legally drinking, they're all at least 21. So that's good. I mean, like,
or was it 18 at the time?
Was it?
In the 60s? I know, because I know it fought back and forth a few times on that one. So I
did.
I don't know. But they do go into more detail that he was in the army in the extended cut. So that is supposed to be the deal.
That's right. Oh, I forgot about that part of the extended cut. I haven't watched the extended cuts in a while. I didn't get an opportunity to watch it for this show. So a lot of that's going to be memory for me. But yeah, I just really like Tom Everett Scott. I remember when I watched La La Land, which I like and I defend. People are mean. I know what's wrong.
I will stay very quiet.
I know what's wrong with it. Don't get me wrong. So
I will be honest with you, Keith. I could not get through 15 minutes of it on a plane. I hated it that much. Like I was on a plane. I was trapped. I had nothing else to do. Like by all means, it should have seemed better to me.
I don't think it should have won an Oscar. Don't get me wrong, but
no. It shouldn't have been it should not have even been nominated. It should have not even gone to theater. They should have seen what they had during the second day of shooting, and they should have been like, we need to all stop doing this movie. And I'm sorry to be that mean, because I know there were a lot of people who worked on it, and I'm sure there were some good dancers in the background, but there was no one in the main cast that should have been in that movie. All right, please go on, Keith. Let's talk about that thing you do.
So I was bringing up La La Land because Tom Everett Scott has a very minor role at the very end. And I remember when we watched it, I was like, that's Tom Everett Scott. And my roommate and / producer Liz is like, I don't know who that is. And I'm like, that thing you do. And she's like, I'm like, can't hardly wait. She's like, not can't hardly. Yeah. I was naming it. I was thinking Ethan Embry in my head for a second there.
Yeah.
I was like, I was naming all the
stuff and think. I was like, wait, was he?
Like, and she's like, I have no idea what you're talking about. So again, that's another one that was kind of sad. Just fell upon the wayside. So yeah. But yeah. And just the cast overall, obviously we've talked about a lot of them, but you kind of made a point of the really weird ones. Like Charlize Theron in a cameo role is crazy. Chris Isaac playing Uncle Bob was amazing because Chris Isaac is an amazing musician, and just have him there for that one scene, I thought that was really great. Kevin Pollak as Boss Vic Koss, so good. There's a physical comedy thing he does in this movie that I use when I write because I love it, where he's standing in front of the camera and he's practicing his lines, and he has the cigarette in his lips, and he's practicing the P, the pa 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 pa, and the cigarette's like bouncing so fast. And I love that image so much that I've given that to like multiple characters I've written just because I love describing that. And then the other like really big one is Peter Scolari played the host of the Hollywood Television Showcase, which was a bosom buddies reunion with Tom Hanks, and I loved that. So yeah, but yeah, just a crazy cast basically.
And Rita Wilson also has like a little cameo.
Yeah, I was going to mention her. She is the bigger one of the Hanks clan, but then Colin Hanks also has one, and I think his daughter also has a small one.
She does, yeah.
And then there's like just the weird cameo in the extended cut, which is Howie Long.
I told my roommate, he watched it with me to give me his feedback. My other roommate, her husband, and about Howie Long. I loved this. I was like, there's an extended cut, and then we find out, spoiler alert in case anyone's worried about the extended cut, we find out that Tom Hanks has a husband. And I was like, it's a famous man. I will give you all day to guess who this is. You will not guess who played this role. And he's like, started naming actors. I'm like, it's not an actor. He's like, musicians. I'm like, it's not a musician. He's just like, what's left? And I was like, it's Howie Long. He's like, what? So yeah, I love that too. Just so good.
Yeah. Of course, Tom Hanks would be able to, when it's like, oh, I'm going to shoot this little movie with all my friends. All of his friends are like giant celebrities throughout like the LA scene. So, it makes sense. Like, this is not like the movie that got Tom Hanks into movies, which would be the case for a lot of, like your Good Will Hunting kind of things, like the breakout thing. No, he was so far into his career at this point. Like, this is well after Forrest Gump.
Yeah.
Right around the time that we did Apollo 13, like John Demme has an appearance in this because Demme's the one who like pushed him to go into it, like go into actually like directing this movie himself.
Right. Yeah. I think it's, again, I love the movie. I think it's great. Obviously, as a music podcaster, I love the music. I think it's really well done. I think it really captures the time very well. But my other podcast is a combo podcast. So I do have to give a couple fun little nods here. which is that Tom Everett Scott, actually, if I remember correctly, and I'm double checking myself, he voiced Booster Gold in Justice League Unlimited. And Jonathan Shaich, who played Jimmy, crazy enough, played Jonah Hex in DC's Legends of Tomorrow. And I hadn't seen him in anything since this movie up to when that show came out. And so I was like, wow, look, synergy. And I love that. So, but yeah, it's just a good movie. It's just good. And
yeah,
it plays a lot on TV. You'll see a lot on your, well, like VH1, but you also see on like a TNT or a TBS kind of, AMC just playing. Because I think it's pretty universal. It's a very universal movie.
And it's a classic story. This is not like a groundbreaking, oh, that's never been told before. Like, this is actually the point of this movie, is that this is a story that's been told before. That this is the story of a one-hit wonder, of a fun, of a band who just got lucky, got on the radio, got the momentum, and then fell apart. And that just happened all the time. And that's the point. But it's fun, and there's good music and good performances. And it's, you have, I think the best part is that even though it's a story that you feel familiar with, you still feel things for all of the characters. And I think that's where it really shines.
Yeah, I think it has the advantage over like a biopic where for one thing, it does not have to be a jukebox musical, even though it has like a pretty similar format to like what all of these are. And two, it can be condensed into the period that we actually care about. Like, we don't have to spend too much time being like, this is what the upbringing of Elvis was. And like, this is the days after Freddie Mercury died for Queen. Like, you don't have to deal with any of that. You're just like, no, we're focused on the story. We're looking at it through the lens of the drummer, but it only cares about the period, like the day that he joins the band.
Yeah.
going forward.
You don't have to like go crazy being like, wait, did that actually happen then? I'm pretty sure. Oh, wait, huh? Because like, that's like sometimes when you're watching a biopic, right? That's like the main thing that you're like, wait, did that happen?
Yeah, you're not spending the whole time like wondering like, are they just like saying he's a better person, or are they saying this person's a worse person? Like,
yeah. Like, how accurate is this? Like, do we really think that person threw that at the wall? Like, is this dramatized, or was this an actual account? You don't have to worry about that here, because even though this is a story that a lot of small bands had in the 60s, because the Wonders or the Oneaters, I actually like Oneaters better. The Oneaters are fictional, right? We can just focus on what the journey is and not have to worry about the rest of that.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about defaming someone. Although then the weird thing is then you have Hanks as Mr. White, their manager, producer, whatever. And he is like the nicest, like suit.
Yeah.
Like he's actually very chill with them all. Like he has like, he has some zingers and you might get annoyed by Lenny. But aside from like, standing up for Faye at the end of the movie.
He's so understanding. I mean, of the fact that he even let Shades stay in the studio. Like, get your deposit back. Like, leave. I'm like, maybe he couldn't. But like, I was like thinking, like, I was just like, no one pays for studio times for like a band that doesn't exist anymore.
I will say, because obviously it is approachable and universal, as I said, I think it is a little squeaky clean when portraying that era. And that kind of leads into what you guys are saying, in that this record exec that's like, don't you worry about it. Oh, breach of contract, no big deal. And I'm like, I remember that line always bothered me. He's like, don't worry about it. I was like, no. Like,
no one's going to jail. I'm just going to be charging you several thousands of dollars.
Yeah. Like, I'm surprised there's no point where the band gets their asses kicked.
Yeah.
Like, that just feels like the type of thing that would have happened in the real world in one of those stories. Like,
well, and the bassist, when he goes missing, it's not that he's gone missing for like nefarious reasons. He's at Disneyland. Like, what?
Yeah, I love that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And they were so ready with the replacement bassist, even though that was going to be like for weeks from then.
Yeah.
I also have to the other thing about the bass player that I absolutely love, a good old Tobias, is that every time they talk about the group, he's never mentioned. Every time
Yeah.
they run down the group, Faye is mentioned, but the bass player is.
Yeah, and they always like they always trail off, being like, "Who am I forgetting right now?"
I mean, even at the end when Hanks gives his heavy-handed like who are the architect characters, he only mentions 3. And okay, look, I get it. Rule of 3, things sound better in 3s, things like that. But there were 4 members of the band.
No, there were 5 because they had Faye.
The Faye
That's
counts,
true.
yeah. And because
Faye
like
was mentioned. She's something special.
Right.
Tobias, nothing. Not even a name.
It's meant to be a pastiche on the fact that no one cares about the bass player, but that doesn't really work nowadays because everybody loves the bass players. So
well, yeah, but I mean, it's the same joke as in like Spinal Tap, where it's like, oh, died in a tragic gardening accident. Like,
it's so great. But yeah, I love that joke.
It's a good running joke. Like this movie has a few good running jokes. It has one that I like, but it doesn't have like a punchline, which is the always leaving the sign on at Guy's dad's like electronic shop.
Oh,
it happens 3 times, but the 3rd time is just it happens to be on. Like it doesn't actually like it's not a joke. It's just like, oh, isn't it funny that that's still happening at this point?
Yeah.
There's several instances of them setting something up, reminding us, and not paying it off.
Yeah.
And I think that's a victim of they're cutting to runtime, and it's an editing sacrifice. And I think the movie could really benefit from a couple of these. Yeah.
And this is one of the ones where like the extended cut does do it better, because that last time that we see the light on, it is the tip off for, I'm blanking on the guy's name, the first producer, the first agent that they get, the one who's the Winnebago.
Phil.
Yeah, Phil. Yeah. So he sees that the light's on. So he pulls up because he wants to go talk to Guy. And he realizes the guy's inside. So like there is a payoff there, but we actually don't get that sequence in the shorter cut.
Right.
And from the standpoint of the information that they actually give, it's fine. It doesn't do, I understand cutting that scene from the standpoint of like, well, it doesn't do much, but then the establishment of like the light being on, like I said, there's just there's no payoff to it as a thing. And it is like one of the main running jokes of the first act of the movie.
Yeah, there's a couple things like that, which we'll probably talk about in the second half. But
yeah,
I mentioned it before, but I want to go a little more in depth with the music. I love the soundtrack for this playlist or for this movie, and I'm going to give my hot take, which Case knows because we've talked about it in the past. That Thing You Do is a great song. Dance With Me Tonight's the best Wonder song by a wide margin. The one that Steve Zahn sings. Imagine that. I love that song. And I recommend everybody look. Billie Joe Armstrong from Green Day did a cover of it. I highly recommend it. And the other songs they do, All My Only Dreams is obviously very slow and dreary, but it's good. I like it. And then
it's a ballad.
It's a ballad. It's too fast, man. I love that. Like, I love how Jimmy's never satisfied. That's a side note, by the way.
Yeah.
like I love that.
Well, he's the artist.
Yeah, exactly. He's the talent.
He's the talent.
And I really like Little Wild One. I wish there was a little more focus on that song as another song of theirs. But also one of the strengths to this is the songs that aren't theirs. I absolutely adore the Diane Day song. Like, it's such a good, like, that's more of like 50s, like, balladier, like sweet love song. I love that song. Like, that's probably my favorite song on the entire soundtrack. Mr. Downtown's fun, obviously.
Yeah.
The
Man with the Badge in the Night.
What's his name? Yeah, I love that so much. It's good. I really like the Chantrelines, the When You Hold My Hand, You Hold My Heart.
You Hold My Heart, yeah.
Classic.
I love the bass player like doing the motions for like backstage for it.
Yes. I love it. And and then like there's the one I really like is I think it's the transition of them at the fairs traveling around. It's that scene of them like running around on the big map.
Yeah.
It's like a surf rock medley like thing. Really liked that because I love surf rock. I'm a surfer, so that really helps.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I just think the soundtrack as a whole is just really solid. Also underrated, the credit song, which is also called That Thing You Do, but it's done more of a 90s like adult alternative style. I really like that song too. So yeah, just great soundtrack. Nominated for Golden Globe, maybe an Oscar, I want to say. So yeah, Academy Award and Golden Globe for Best Original Song is That Thing You Do. So yeah, but I think you mentioned Jukebox Musical earlier, and that you just gave me shivers when you said that because I was like, this movie would be so much worse. It was the exact same movie, but a jukebox musical.
Right.
Yeah.
So
but
bad.
like, how far is this really from Jersey Boys?
Yeah.
You know, like and there are good things and bad things. You know, like I would argue that Jimmy is, as a character in this, is a Bob Gaudio type figure in a certain regard, because he goes off and eventually becomes a music producer, not satisfied with the work that he was doing as part of the band. You know, but they're free to, for one thing, they're free to have a villain, even if they don't go very hard on Jimmy being the villain of this whole piece. But he is, and there's like some good character work stuff that goes on throughout it to sort of set up like, no, this relationship is fucking toxic.
Yeah. Actually, I think Jimmy gets the best like postscript of anybody. It's my favorite because I love the fact that he not only got another band, he named it what he wanted to name this band in the first place, which is the Herdsmen, and then he went back to Playtone.
Yeah.
I love that. Like, I love this. I quit. Haha, I'm walking out of here. And I love that he went back to. I want to see that scene. I want to see where he goes back to Playtone and Mr. White's there being like, "Welcome back, Jimmy." You know, and like, I want to see that so bad. Like, that's intriguing to me. So, yeah, that was a really satisfying postscript, I think.
Yeah, and like, you know, they didn't need to go too hard on what happened to them afterwards, but it is kind of, I think, a trend of like 60s, like, or rather any like period piece thing to be like, okay, what happened to them? Because, you know, now is now. Like what occurred for these characters in the intervening years. And I think Jimmy's is the most interesting one, because like Lenny's is like, oh yeah, well now he owns a hotel in Nevada. He's currently single, and that's a fun joke because like he's the Joker of the whole group. And like all right, so Guy and Faye like have a music conservatory, and they're probably doing just fine. You know, it's interesting. I was watching the special features for the movie, and they were talking a lot about how Guy starts the movie in a pretty good spot. Like he's actually like, he's got, you know, like while he might bristle under working for his dad, like he has a job. He clearly makes more money than most of the people around him. Like he's well enough off that he can buy lunch, or rather buy breakfast for the table when he dings Faye's car at the beginning of the movie. So he's financially in a good spot. He has a good setup to like play his drums and like do a thing, but it's a private thing, and he isn't getting it there, but you know, he's well respected. He's got a beautiful girlfriend who like kind of might be into him because his dad owns this like a successful store in town. But you know, whatever, like, objectively, he's in a good position at the start of the movie, but it's not enough for him. And he never actually like goes too far. Like he lands in a pretty good spot. Like he's at every point, like, he never overextends himself. And that's kind of just an interesting detail when he is like clearly the character who Tom Hanks is supposed to be.
Yeah. I mean, they literally call him the lone beatnik, like in that first scene. So he definitely seems to me like, as you said earlier, he might be a little bit older. But I would only say probably about 2 years, because I feel like they went to high school together.
Yeah, he can't be older than Lenny by much, because they were in a band together when they were younger too.
True. Well, or I think that was a joke. I think that was like, oh, we sucked, and they're like, oh, weren't you in that band? Like,
no, the like church band, like they talk about it when. Yeah.
Oh yeah, okay. I thought you were talking about that gag in that first scene. But I do think he was like the cool guy that, you know, the cool person in school that isn't actually friends with anyone, but everybody agrees that person is cool. That's Tom Everett Scott's character. Like, yeah, I like him a lot, but yeah, I definitely feel like Tom Hanks really put himself into that character a lot. So, yeah, I think it's really cool. You mentioned her, so let's talk about it. Let's talk about Faye. How do we feel about Faye's portrayal in the movie? Not the performance, because Liv Tyler is incredible and perfect. But how do we feel about the role she plays and what happens with her? Because I have thoughts, and I'm curious to see what you guys think.
I mean, there's certainly it's good that she is the one who dumps Jimmy, as opposed to like either some scenario where like she walked in on him cheating, or something where it was like a big, like she had a moment to make it her choice, and it was a thing that didn't have to go any one way. So it is her having that agency, I think, is good.
Yeah.
And I think that she clearly shows that she is like a very capable part of this team, you know, like the person managing box office, person selling merch, person who is definitely going to be the underrated one in a group, and like I've been there before.
Yeah.
Like, so I definitely relate on all of those things. But I mean, she is in this very toxic relationship, and it is hard to watch in this movie.
I think that there was something nice for me, like watching it, only because I feel like I know that girl. I've seen that girl. Like, and I used to be in a band, and I was in the band, so I wasn't selling the merch, but I've seen that girl. I've seen the girl who follows their boyfriend to the show. He is a narcissist. Part of the reason he is so attracted to her is because she's so devoted to him and his band and his, kind of goals and the things that he wants and the things that he needs. And, they're lovely. They're sweet, and Faye is sweet. She's kind. She's considerate of everyone. She's very observant. She's very smart. She's just got this one blind side, and that is Jimmy. And so I think, like, in a lot of ways, it's a kind of accurate portrayal of things that you do see in real life. That doesn't make it any less sad. And I think that that's where you see, like, Shades sympathizing with her, and that's just a much cooler name than his actual name. So that's what I'm going with, guys. And you see, like, the movie makes like this case where, like, you're watching this, and I think it's also like contextually, like, it's terrible to say it, but women were a little less forceful about, this is before the 70s movement. I mean, yes, we have the right to vote already, so that's nice. But there's still a lot of women who are preparing just to be housewives, to be dedicated to their husbands. We are in the middle of the 60s, so yes, there is a sexual revolution going on, but it's not happening in Erie, Pennsylvania, and it's not happening for Faye. Clearly.
Yeah, it's 1964. It's the beginning of this.
Yeah, it's not happening for Faye right this moment. And so you kind of see that. So I think that, like, what makes that last speech so powerful, and I did, like, as a young woman, find that speech that she gave so powerful and her performance so lovely, is because it's the first moment where Faye really puts her foot down. And it's like, honestly, for me, it's like the biggest moment in the film. I know other stuff happens, but as a young woman watching this, I was, I don't know, in my early 20s or my late teens when this came out, and I just thought that it was like that whole line, like, shame on me for kissing you with my eyes closed so tightly, because it's just such a good line, and it's not, it's not that it's that she's so blinded to who he really was. And, like, it's just this moment of, like, oh my God, you jerk. Like, fuck you. Like, and it's so lovely. Like, and she does such a good job with it. Liv Tyler does such a good job with it. And so I think that, I think more, my bigger issue actually with Faye is just, like, the last half of the film, actually, just because it doesn't feel like a true journey back into love. Like I think eventually she could, like, hang out with Shades, but I don't think that would happen that soon. That's my biggest issue. But other than that, right up until my favorite bellhop sends love her way, I love her character. I love her arc. I think that she's one of the more interesting characters. She's the heart of the band.
Exactly. Yeah, I agree 100% in that. I love the character. I love the portrayal. My main issue with Faye is strictly, what does she want? You know what I mean? What's her drive besides to be with Jimmy? And we never learn anything about, and that's fine. If she was a background character, it's fine to not learn everybody's motivations. I mean, but this is one of the main characters. Depending on the cover of the movie you get, she's the biggest person on the cover besides Tom Hanks. Why? What does she want? Why is she there? Besides the fact she loves Jimmy. Does she love music? Is that a thing? Because she starts a conservatory with Guy later, and it says they found it. So maybe she served a purpose in that. Is there something she's really good? There's a lot of questions there that I think could have been really easily answered. And extended cut goes into more stuff, which we'll talk about. But I think that's the biggest miss as far as characterization goes for me, is one of the best and most likable characters, really could have used a little more spotlight, used a little more, like, we know more about what the bass player wants than what she wants.
Yeah, that's
right.
true.
Like, that's kind of, to me, a big glaring omission. But I do love her. I love Liv, did an amazing job. And I agree with you about the romance. It did flip real quick.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I mean, there is like a small implication in that last scene, where he says, I'll stop by, we'll listen to records. And it makes it sound like, yes, she's a real music fan, but you never really get confirmation or anything like really drawn out. There's never a moment where like they sit down and talk about dreams or hopes or things like that, which would have been nice also for just building to the romance that seems so forced at the end between the two of them. You have lovely little tiny moments, like he's definitely caring, like he makes sure that he gets it. She makes it into the car when a security guard thinks that she's just a groupie or a fan, which of course Jimmy doesn't notice because he's a fucking narcissist. And when she's sick on the plane, Jimmy's not the person who checks on her, it's Shades. And so there's like these tiny, like little things here and there, but it's never like substantial enough to make me feel like they should be making out at the end of the movie.
Yeah, it's not a romantic thing. I believe Guy would do that for any member of the band. Like if Lenny was sick, he'd be like, Lenny, you feeling okay, bud? Like he'd be the one checking on them. Lenny asks for $400 and he gives it to him. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, that's pocket change.
Yeah, he's the one that would take care of any of them, even Jimmy, I think. So whereas
he's the mom of the band.
Yes, but he clearly has a lot of affection for Faye throughout, like the way he behaves. Like he is a nice guy and would do the nice things for everything or for everyone, but he almost crosses the line into a little creepy at a few points. And it's because it's ultimately, they are destined to be together at the end of the movie. That it's like, fine. But like, he comes in and like right before Faye breaks up with Jimmy, he's like, the lovely Faye has to speak. Everyone like pay attention. Like that's a weird dude. Like if you're in the room with that, where like someone who is not dating this person is acting that way, just out of the blue. Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like Shades would do it if even Tobias needed to speak. I think he'd be like, the hyper Tobias needs to speak and do some push-ups. Like he would, I don't know. I think you're wrong, Case. I think he really would do it for anyone.
And there's also, I mean, again, we're talking the 60s. She's also the only girl.
Right.
And he could be a very traditional, very well-mannered person who would stick up for the girl. I never saw it as romantic for most of the movie.
And at one point she does like, he was just like, well, I wouldn't, in this scene that I'm not quite sold on, he does say that he wouldn't be a gentleman if he talked about, more about his ex-girlfriend. And she goes, oh, gentlemen, I forgot what those look like. So there is implications that he's full of valor.
And it's...
Yeah, well, no, he's totally like the team paladin and like he's smiting those drums.
It's way more apparent in the extended version, which is what I'll say. There's they do a lot better of hinting at a possible romance later on in the extended version, which yeah,
and that's the thing where like why would we even talk about this movie that we all agree is great? It's because we know that there are things that they can do better because they were done better. Like the Jimmy relationship with Faye is such like their thing, because like Faye kind of comes off as a person who doesn't necessarily have her own passion, but she really is passionate about supporting someone else's passion. Like she's really passionate about supporting Jimmy and his art and everything. And then when she's with Guy, like, yeah, like you want to like celebrate music. Let's celebrate music in a way that's like making the world a better place and doing it well, which I can get behind. Like there are plenty of things in my life where it's not my dream, but it's someone else's dream. And I believe in their dream that, you can get behind it. Like there's like the company I work for in a lot of ways is because like I believed in my boss when he started this company, so like it's not my dream that we're putting forward. It's his, but like we're like it's a thing that is working out well. And so there's like good support there. I understand a person not necessarily being like, oh, this is what I want to do with my life, especially if she's like 24. Like makes sense. But that relationship is then so well laid out. And like, so there's two reads you can do for Jimmy, and one, which is just a straightforward, like as he rises into fame, he becomes like arrogant and doesn't think he's too good for her at a certain point. Or there's one where he never actually cared for her. And I think this one's the more interesting read of it all, where I saw TV Tropes even mention that that it seems like he has a past love that he's writing all these songs about. But there's a point, and I forget if it's in both cuts or if it's just in the extended, where he is talking about, I'm blanking on the name of the song, the love song that is the B-side.
All My Own Lonely Dreams.
Yes. Like he's talking about how he really likes that song and really wants to make sure that gets on the B-side. And Faye is like, and it's based on me. And he's in the background. So it's like blink and you'll miss it. He like looks angrily at her. But then when they're recording it, he's like putting on a show to be that he's like singing to her. And so I think that he has taken the idea that whoever his current girlfriend is who he's going to address these like songs, these like romance songs that he's doing in the performance. And so she is taking that as sincere, but for him, it's just the performative act of his sociopathic like stance on being an artist. And like it's laid out there and it just keeps going until we get to the end.
I think Jimmy wrote every single one of these songs staring in a mirror.
That's also possible too.
I think he's like, oh man, look at himself. Man, that thing you do, look at you. Like, like at 100%. He's such a narcissist that I think every one of these songs is about himself and it's from the person that he imagines praising him. Like, I don't know. He's so unlikable. And not that I dislike the actor, because I think he does an amazing job of being unlikable. He's really good at that. And I love how I'm going to nerd out just a little bit, how sometimes where he's almost Vulcan-like, because he's got that elven almost look. And and the line of like, and then we will go and go into the studio, because the point of all this is to record more albums. Like it's just like focused, and it's like I really like that. So he's kind of cold and emotionless, and he's just about like, I need to get my word out there, and I just really love that pretentious artistic look. Like it's so good. I really like one of my favorite things about it is they're really good with visual imagery sometimes in this. There's the shot where they're at their last county fair, they all wore gold, and that's when they found out they're number 7 and they're going to LA. And the shot backstage, they're all wearing their gold jackets still, but Jimmy's taking his off and they're wearing black underneath. So everybody's in gold except Jimmy. And he's also apart from the group. And when they celebrate, they all go in for a hug, but he's not there. The camera actually cuts him out in the shot. And then he enters it a moment later just to hug Faye, doesn't celebrate with anybody else. So it's really interesting. Like they do that quite a few times with him where they make him very other. And I really enjoy that. I like stuff like that. So the other thing I really loved about the movie, and I just have to give a shout out to, is Colleen Atwood, who did the costumes. Colleen Atwood is a legend in movies, and made so many amazing everything, basically. So much good stuff, especially a lot of like American period pieces. Say what you will about the terrible Fantastic Beasts movies, the costumes were pretty great. Colleen Atwood did those. Did Chicago. Did Memoirs of a Geisha, Edward Scissorhands, Ed Wood, Beloved, Sleepy Hollow, like all those. And so I think Colleen Atwood did such a great job with the costumes. Yeah, I just think that was one thing that really popped out at me. I never really noticed costumes very much, but my producer Liz is huge on costumes. She's always pays attention to when we're talking about a movie. And she kind of pointed it out. Hey, this is, really good costuming. It's actually very accurate. So many of the girls were wearing glasses because there weren't really contacts then. So more people would be wearing glasses, and just little touches like that I really, really liked. And then, the hairstyling and the makeup and everything like that. It was very period appropriate, if not perfect, but appropriate. I really enjoyed.
Yeah, it definitely feels like, if not necessarily how the world actually was, it feels like what it felt like to live in that world, especially when looking back with like the rose tinted glasses of Tom Hanks in the 90s, thinking back to being like, I'm guessing like a preteen or early teenager at that period where like all these like music acts are becoming huge, and there's a real shift in the art form at the time. So it just feels like a snapshot of that moment, regardless of if anything's anachronistic or not.
Yeah, definitely.
That was just a long way of saying the exact same thing.
Yes, it was.
So yeah, like, I mean, again, this is a movie that I like a lot. It feels, but in its theatrical form, it feels very so tight that you lose some of the character details. And so those are the only things I'm really like kind of missing that I wish were in this movie. But I do want to pivot over to like what's actually in the extended cut, because that's what I'm going to be pulling from when we actually get into our pitches. And I sort of want to talk about like what kind of things are in it because it's a full hour longer.
Yeah, which is crazy.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've made my opinion clear on director's cuts in the past. So, but because of the Snyder cut. But anyways, but I think this is it's a good supplement. I think it's good choices. And I definitely think we could have drawn some stuff from the extended cut. So yeah, let's talk about it.
Yeah. So first off, it starts being the extended cut well before you think it will, because there are a lot of scenes that are just way longer throughout this whole thing, especially a lot of scenes early on with Guy and with Charlize Theron with Tina. Like, you get much more of their relationship and sort of understanding what's going into that. And I really like things like that because that helps inform more about Guy and more about that relationship that will at least like be additional drama in this movie, aside from just like, oh man, we keep on winning, guys. Everything's going great, guys. It really helps set up like who Guy is specifically and like what he is going through that's pushing him into this moment of being like, I do really just miss like performing. So those are like nice kind of details. We get a lot more of the store and like his dad, who is a pain. And it like, on the one hand, these are kind of like in my middle tier of like the types of scenes that are in this movie or of the like, added scenes. I mean, in that they do inform things about the movie, but they're probably too much. Like they probably should be cut, but they're still like, they're additive to what we're getting out of it. And then there are scenes where who cares? There's a whole bunch of scenes where it's like, here's a person just being kind of shitty backstage. Here is like just kind of like a little bit of like drama going on. There's like one of the really egregious one is when they're about to go on live TV at the end of the movie. They have a guy who's just like yelling at his assistant about the coffee he got, which I'm sure is just like something Hanks has heard a billion times on set. So he wanted to make sure it was in there. But it's such just like, here's just a person being douchey for no reason at this moment that is, not what this movie is about necessarily. It's not like it just is padding to the running time. And the extended cut is, I guess they wanted to make it feel like it was worthwhile, but like in terms of getting to the what I would think of is a nice like 100 minute, 110 minute cut of this movie. I like those are not the scenes that I want to put back into it.
I think the main thing for me with the extended cut is there is more with the bass player, specifically with the Chantraline's singer that he has a crush on. Because I definitely loved that.
They actually get it on.
Yeah, exactly. She's so pretty and he's so adorable. And I was like, I want that. Like, I want headcanon. That's my headcanon. They're together. And so it definitely goes more into that. I really enjoy that. I also, again, do really like the addition with Tom Hanks with Mr. White. Yeah. And with Howie Long, interior or defensive lineman, Howie Long.
I love that scene. It's not very long. It doesn't, like I definitely wouldn't. There's a call out to him later where like White tries to get the astronaut Grissom to like say hi on the phone. Like that's too much. Like that's just Tom Hanks being Tom Hanks. Like, ooh, can I like revel in the fact that I just love astronaut shit? Like, okay. But the scene itself is pretty short and I think it's fun. And I hope that it wasn't cut because of like studios being like, you can't you can't play a gay guy, Tom Hanks. Like that's again, this is post Philadelphia.
Yeah.
I don't know why they would cut it. I think that like the movie just ends up being so family friendly. And I think that was probably part of that like purge to get down to that level.
As someone who's lived in the South for a good chunk of my life, I can tell you it's because this is meant to appeal to families and it would have gotten a reputation, and that's unfortunate. I'm not saying that's definitely what happened, but I can easily see that's happened. Philadelphia doesn't have the same target audience as that thing you do, unfortunately.
That's fair. Yes.
So I think that's part of it. I don't think if that was in the movie, it would have been showing on VH1 every hour on the hour for 6 years. You know what I mean? Like that kind of thing. So that's unfortunate. The fact they shot it, the fact it was originally in the story is great. In 96, that's really awesome. So like, so just that being there, but I would have liked to have had that been in there. I think if this movie was made now, it would be in there, obviously.
Yeah. Because it's so tame. I mean, like,
it's nothing.
Honestly, even if you have it, all the things that's in the extended cut, like you wouldn't necessarily know if you were just like a kid who was not familiar with the concept of like homosexuals. Like it could be tighter in a way that is less explicit, but it's not explicit unto itself. So I feel like they could have, gotten through censors on that one. But
yeah,
I don't know. It's nice. It's it's nice, and it kind of confirms like stuff about White, where it's just like, oh, it's just nice to know more about this character.
Yes, he's not just a suit, a good suit. Like,
right.
That's pretty much it. Yeah, I do like about Mr. White though. I do like how he is a little bit of a mother for them, even though, like I said, it did make him a little bit like nicer and more squeaky clean than the reality would imply. I do like how he seems to want to take care of them and like jokes around with them a bit, but still keeps the straight-laced thing going. I really like that. So
yeah.
But anyways,
yeah. Also in the extended cut, it is just more sexually explicit in general. There's like more making out. There's more like touching. There's more like sexy lines. And I'm pretty sure there's supposed to be a blowjob reference when Charlize Theron says, "I'll give you my patented goodnight kiss."
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah,
I mean, yeah.
I can see why they cut it, because it does not really feel like this movie at all. Like, I like it. It's good. It's a good development of that, but it's definitely not necessary, and it definitely probably didn't fit the tone, I think. So, yeah.
Yeah, the only one that I really wish they had kept in the movie that's an explicit sex thing, as opposed to like the Howie Long one, the Chanterlines thing when Tom Everett Scott walks in on Tobias's room, and being like, look at what we're at on the charts. Oh, and then like just walks out without saying a word, but like gives a handshake as he's like walking out the door. Like, I thought that's a good scene, and that's such a good moment for both of them, where you're like, yeah, go Tobias, you're such a shy little guy. That's great. And also, Guy is such everyone's booster. Like that, I like that being part of his character and just being affirmed here as well.
Yeah, definitely. I also really like the extended stuff with Guy and Faye. We talked about it a little bit, but in the extended cut, it makes the relationship feel like it didn't come out of left field more, I guess is the best way to say it.
Yeah.
It's just kind of like, okay, so maybe this is something, but they both have people, and like I think that's probably the thing I miss the most from the actual movie, is just a little more development of that, which we'll talk about later. But yeah.
I mean, it's weird looking at those two side by side, because again, one is just so tuned, and then the other one is so like baggy, I guess would be the way. Like, I don't know. It's like because it's I said bloated earlier, but I do need to emphasize that like both cuts are great. Like both are good movies. They're equally far away from like whatever the best version of this movie is, but just in opposite sides.
Yeah.
And
perfection somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, exactly. That's So it's a weird one to talk about, because it is definitely a gem that while it might need some polish, like it is definitely a gemstone in this conversation. This is not, the 1989 or 1998 Godzilla movie, for example.
What? It's a masterpiece.
This is gonna take a lot less work, and thus it's gonna be a lot more like precise work on this all.
Also, last thing for the extended edition, for me at least, Guy gets a different ending, and I don't like it. He becomes a DJ at that jazz station they went to.
Yeah.
Instead of doing the music conservatory, I'd like the music conservatory more personally, and the session musician, like he did stuff like that. So I prefer that over the extended cut ending. So
yeah, that's true. My headcanon was that it was like, I just assumed that all of it happened, but one was like a specific.
I kind of took either or, so but that makes sense.
Okay, yeah, it's hard to really say. So yeah, but that's true. It is less exciting. Although he kind of becomes a podcaster at the end. In the extended cut. It's like, oh, I just want to sit down and chat with the most interesting jazz musicians that I know.
Yeah. I like him being a performer, because the whole reason he ended up saying yes was, it'd be great to play with people again. That's literally like his quote. So him becoming a session musician is awesome, because he gets to pick and choose when he wants to play with and who he wants to play with. So I thought that was a natural conclusion of what he actually wanted. So he was literally playing in a basement in the dark by himself at the beginning of the movie, and then now he plays for famous people in LA. Like, that's an amazing arc. So yeah,
with artists that he respects and likes. So
Yeah, but you know he would have a podcast today where it's like then
100%.
like after they interview talking about their careers and he'll be like, back when I was with the Wonders, like and he'll overemphasize it when it was a band he was only in for like 4 months.
Yes,
but at the end of every episode, they'll be like, all right, and now we're going to jam together, guys.
100%. That's a good
but
hook.
before,
I would listen to that podcast.
Yeah, no. But before I start jamming, let's take a word from our sponsor, Squarespace.
Exactly.
Speaking of talking about things, we should I feel like we're like getting towards pitch time.
Yeah. No, I think this is a natural segue for us. To actually let's hear a word from our sponsor.
Yeah. Or, talk about some of the other wonderful shows on our network.
Yeah. Yeah. Wonderful shows at certainpov.com, where you can find many great shows like Jukebox Vertigo, or whatever this ad is about to be. Who knows?
It's a mystery.
All right, Josue, let's go through our new Comic Day stack. We have a lot to review.
I know. Maybe we've gone too far.
Well, let's see. Marvel, of course. DC.
I got Image, Dark Horse,
Black Mask, Boom, IDW.
Aftershock, Vault, of course, Mad Cave,
Oni, Valiant, Scout.
Magma, Behemoth.
Wow, that's a lot. Well, all we need now is a name for our show. We need a name for our show about reviewing comic books every week. Something clever, but not too clever.
Like a pun? It's kind of cheesy.
Yeah, something that seems funny at first, but we might regret later on as an impulsive decision a few dozen episodes in.
Yeah, we'll think of something.
Join Keith and Josue for We Have Issues, a weekly show reviewing almost every new comic released each week, wherever you listen to your podcasts.
Video games are a unique medium.
They can tell stories,
Immerse us in strange, fantastic worlds.
blur the very boundaries of our reality.
But at the end of the day, video games are fun, whatever fun is to you.
I'm Jeff Moonen,
And I am Matt, a.k.a. Stormageddon.
and on Fun and Games, we talk about the history, trends, and community of video games.
It's a celebration of all the games we play and all the fun we find within them.
And there's so many more games out there, so we hope you'll share in that conversation with us.
Fun and Games podcast with Matt and Jeff. Find us on certainpov.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
And happy gaming.
And we're back. So, Keith, I feel like this is going to end up being a collaborative process anyway. It's going to be a jam session of some sort. But there is still one and only one real rule on this podcast, which is that I am not allowed to go before Sam in terms of giving pitches. And you are a guest, so you are allowed to decide if you want to take the first swing, if you want to have Sam take the first swing. I'm just not allowed to go before her.
I think I'm going to take the first swing because I think you and I are going to have similar things. And if we just do them back to back, that's going to be boring. So, so this should be a miniseries, not a movie.
Oh, like a Band of Brothers type thing?
Because, hey, one of my favorite miniseries ever, Merlin, starring Sam Neill, was only 2 years after this. And I could definitely see this on ABC, CBS, Fox, NBC, something like that, running as a special event kind of thing. It's nostalgic. It can get replayed multiple times. I think it could have been like a 4 to 5 episode miniseries, stretching it out, learning about the characters a little bit more. That's a structural idea. I'm going to ignore that idea for now, but that's just my first thought was, let's just make it a miniseries. But if we're sticking with the movie, if we're sticking in this format, we're sticking at that time, my very first thing is, okay, let me actually start with the easy one. Lamar. We talked about Lamar. I want to get this out of the way. Lamar is an important character. Sam made a very good point as to why Lamar needs to be there. My simple solution is Lamar should not be a bellhop. He should not be a concierge. He should either own the hotel or he should be another celebrity that's staying at the hotel that they keep running into.
Like a Sammy Davis Jr. type?
Yes, he could serve the exact same purpose, but just is there and he is a name of himself. You know what I mean? Like, because when I first watched as a kid, I thought he owned the hotel because he says, this is my hotel.
Yeah, he claims ownership, or he verbalizes ownership.
But then it's like, oh no, he's not really. It's just him being like really good customer service, and I'm like, no, like just make him the owner of the hotel. Just make him the one running everything, and he's just really hands on. Or make him a celebrity of some kind that stays at the hotel that they run into in the little diner down there. He could serve the exact same purpose. He could point him towards the great jazz, everything like that, and it would be less less awkward.
Yeah,
That's the word I was-
he's just outside smoking. That's why he's standing outside
Yeah.
when you walk up. Like, yeah.
exactly. And he could be less like, I'm here to serve you kind of feel like that made it really awkward. Also, he doesn't look at the camera at the end of the movie, or maybe he does. I don't care. That's funny. So that's my fix for Lamar personally. I think that would solve a lot of the problems with him. My next thing. I'm not going to bring in too much from the extended cut because I mean honestly that's someone else's idea. I'm just being like do that. But I do want the bass player in the Chantrelline scenes, and I think that was well developed. I think he's a character that almost had nothing to do.
Yeah.
And then also in this day and age, I would want the Howie Long scene in, but I understand probably why it was cut. It's unfortunate the times we were in then, and it's awful, but I personally would put it back in. The big thing from the extended cut, and this kind of goes to what I was talking about earlier, I really want the Guy and Faye flirtation to actually be in the movie, to make that not come out of nowhere. Also, Guy is a little too virtuous. So him being torn would actually be a really good character like thing for him. It's like, I really like this girl. She's with my buddy though. Like, but I like her, but she's with my buddy. You know, like that would be just enough to make him not kind of a perfect dude. The only thing wrong with him is he's really oblivious to his last girlfriend who's terrible. So who cares about her? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
So I think that'd be a good thing. And then along with that, did I say Tina? I meant to say Faye, sorry. I'm looking at my notes and I wrote Tina. Along with that, I want Faye to be more developed as a character. As I mentioned, I want to know what her drive is. So I'm big on headcanon. And in my head, they started a music conservatory together, and she's actually involved in that. She's actually like interested musically. And in my headcanon, she actually helped Jimmy write the songs and provided suggestions that he always took.
Mm-hmm.
And so she becomes a songwriter in my head, which I really like the idea of her becoming a songwriter opposing to her ex. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's a really cool
Yeah.
idea. And then she, so they run the music conservatory together. It's not him running it and her raising their 4 children, because if her only motivation is to marry cute guy, have 4 babies, I hate that. Like, I hate that so much. Yeah. So those are my big things. There's other little tiny structural things that I'm not going to pick apart too much. Little edits and stuff like that. But I think those are the big things. And obviously that would work better in a miniseries if we're going to extend every character, make more about it. But that is more of a modern fad. So I'm trying to stick in the 90s. And I think these are the things that would really structure it. Now, here's the problem. We don't want to bloat the movie too much. So my question is, when is it cut? And I'm going to have to say, as I watched the movie, there was one glaring thing that I thought could easily be cut from this movie. And unfortunately, his performance is great and it was funny, but the original manager, Phil, didn't need to exist in this movie. You can find a way to transition them from being at Villapiano's to Tom Hanks. You know what I mean? Like, it would cut out everything with Phil. We could find another way to do the Pittsburgh showcase. Maybe that's like something Tom Hanks sets up for them or something like that. You know what I mean? Like, I just think that Phil, while he is a necessary step forward in them, it feels like, but if he was removed, it wouldn't really change much. The only thing I think we'd lose of value in that is the first time they hear themselves on the radio. And again, I think that could be handled at the Italian restaurant. I think we can find a way to do that there. Maybe their fan. Oh, that's my other favorite Lenny line is, "Hey, isn't that our fan?" Maybe his uncle runs the local radio station. He gives him his copy. He buys at Villapiano's, and he's like, "Hey, check this out." He plays on, and maybe it'll surprise them. They're not looking for it. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's the structural thing I would probably remove. I think that would take out enough to put the rest of this in. Other than that, I think everybody else is developed pretty well. So I don't really feel the need to add mostly anything to anybody, except for that the Guy Faye relationship is the big one, and then the bass player. Give him some love; he's great. So yeah. So that's my fixes.
Yeah, I really love the idea of, because I hadn't thought about this with like what I would. I apologize that I hadn't put too much thought into like what I would give Faye outside of everything. But I love the idea of her being like a Carole King type character, like having like this like tradition of writing music. And like Jimmy is such a narcissist who takes credit for everything. Like he takes the entire credit for that thing you do, even though it was a totally different style of song until Guy transformed it by like upping the tempo on it. That it would just make so much sense that he'd also be doing the same thing for every other aspect of writing the music.
And I think that there's enough to support it in the text that already exists, because she's the first person who really realizes the value of the things that Guy brings to it. She's knows enough to know that without him joining the band, none of it would have happened, you know, that he's the force that brings them. And she has moments of being like, oh, that works better. Oh, what about this? She even is the reason why they get their name, and that's the name that they agree with. It's really mostly Faye. She adds a lot to them, whether or not she's acknowledged or not.
Yeah, you could literally have like Jimmy writing the song and her like offering a suggestion that he ends up using. You know, and it could be like you could make it literal, or you can leave it as is. You know, because there is enough, like you said already in the text, to suggest that. But I like the idea of her becoming a songwriter. I think that's really cool. She's obviously driven by music. She really liked Jimmy, but she also dropped her life and traveled across the country with a bunch of boys on a tour. You know what I mean? Like, you gotta love music. You don't just do that. You know what I mean? So I think that'd be a good direction for her. It would give her a purpose alongside Guy as equal partners that can work together to do things, and gives her a purpose also in their later business, which is mentioned. And I think that's the reason why I like his ending in the original better, is because I like the idea of them working together and teaching the next generation, because they're both passionate about it. And again, that would give her something to do and more Liv Tyler. So that's good. Sam.
Yeah. Okay. So, because Case can't go before me, this is definitely my turn. So I actually probably wouldn't change a lot about this movie. The only thing that I really would do is I would cut down on that last conversation in the cafe, and instead insert a conversation earlier in the movie that is the one-on-one bonding experience between Shades and Faye. And now I know, because of our collaborative effort, that would be about music. And that would be like a funny thing about the music they love and what she's listening to. And then in that scene, she could actually kind of tell her that she like, oh, well, like this, I actually like worked on the lyrics for this, or, you know, that kind of thing, where you kind of understand where they're like, oh, we're really vibing about music. Because the thing is that the last scene in the coffee shop is awkward and really heavy-handed, and it doesn't work. It doesn't work, especially out of the guise of whatever else happened in the rest. Like, it is an honest moment, but like, I know she's heartbroken, but honestly, when I'm heartbroken, I don't ask people about making out with their significant other or their exes. Like, that's just not something I do. And again, this is a heavy-handed script, so I think like part of it's just like, don't worry, a case is coming. But I just feel like that scene can be cut down so I get a little more bonding earlier on. Because other than that, like, everyone's really fun. And I know you guys want more for Tobias, but you know what? No one cares about the bassist. And I think we need to keep that joke going. He doesn't get laid. He doesn't have anything. He just runs off. No one cares about the bassist. He doesn't even have an archetype. Screw that guy. And so, you know, I wouldn't have our favorite bellhop extraordinaire wink at the camera. I would just have him very honestly and earnestly tell him have him say, hey, Faye's waiting over there. And because the wink is too much of a magical Negro thing. We're not doing that. We're not going there anymore. So no wink. And I would still leave him the way he is. He's lovely. He's in the gift shop. He's everywhere you need him. I love it. He's on the ground. He's working. I'm fine with him. He's charming. But no wink. No wink. Not like, I've set them up.
Don't break the fourth wall at all.
Yeah, don't. Just, we didn't do it before. You're not Deadpool. We're not doing it. But, just be helpful. And so I think they can have like a quick conversation, but I would cut out a good 5 minutes of it and just kind of have them, and then have him come out and be like, Faye, wait, like, why don't you stay, make music? And like, maybe I may not even do a kiss, because I know that it was supposed to be like the big moment, but like, it feels weird to me. Like, it feels weird and forced. I don't like it.
And it's such a line that leads into it. Like, how would you, like, I'm going to just.
When's the last time you were
like,
kissed?
you've been
And
really
also,
well kissed, yeah.
Also, like, wow, real shade on Jimmy, because like it was years ago and it wasn't even him,
Right.
which I kind of enjoyed, but also no. So I think like,
Well, prepare to have your mind blown. Wow.
I know that's so much pressure to put on your first kiss.
right?
Yeah.
Like you're like, oh, I'm gonna have to kiss the shit out of you, and then it's just like, no.
Yeah.
What if this is bad? No.
It's too much. And then she like goes, well, it's still that guy from 11th grade, and walks away from you. That's a lot. Like, I don't like that. So I would cut that, and I would just have her be like, make music, and she'd be like, yeah, let's make some music. And then you can still have the end where they eventually get married, have a conservatory, and all that fun thing, which was really popular around those years. Like, a lot of movies did the like, what are they doing? Like, so-and-so went to college and blah, 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 So this is something that was part of the filmmaking just world in the late 90s, early 2000s. We really liked updates, even on fictional characters. But I would keep it because it's really great. And so I would keep it nice, sweet, and short, but I would cut some of that in order to give me some more up top. And I think in the conversation up top, if we give Faye's character motivation and love for music, then we kind of understand why she's willing, or why she's so blinded by Jimmy, right? Because he's so talented and she just loves good music. He's so talented. It's such good music and it's amazing. Oh my, but I did work on these lines. Oh, that's my favorite line, so just kind of, I think that would have kept it short and sweet, and just added what needed to be fixed, which is just that really fucking awkward end. That kiss did not work. That whole conversation was weird. All right, Case, you can go now.
Well, I want to really quick jump in on yours. I love your idea. And I love the idea of the conversation happening earlier in the movie. And my thought immediately as you said that was like, what if he's listening to jazz and she actually shows an interest in jazz? And it's the only person in the movie that shows any interest in jazz with him, besides actual jazz musicians.
Right.
I thought that would be a really great, like, little touch. And then that would make sense for them to collaborate with music. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There's actually, so in the extended cut, there is a scene where they are in the wrong dressing room. They're in, they're in the dressing room of what's his face, the Kevin Pollak's dressing room.
Boss Vikas.
Boss Vikas. Yeah, so he's in their dressing room, and he sees that there's like all these people have signed the door to the bathroom. And so he's like going through and he finds Del Paxton's name on it. And Lenny immediately pops out, Del Paxton, and like starts signing his name next to Del's. So what the weird spot is that Lenny does show in that extended cut that he has some of that knowledge. Like I really feel like the headcanon is that Lenny and Guy are like actual friends back in the day that had shared interests and like went and did different things. But then like it's kind of like nice for them to be back together, just being like, oh, right, that fucking record we used to play when we were like hanging out, like before you went to the army.
I'd completely forgot about that scene. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So, but it's weird that that's Lenny's thing, because I do agree that I think that Faye having interest in music, it feels a little tropey of like more modern movie kind of tropey to be like, oh, the girl is the one who knows all the bands and like whatnot. I like, because it's like trying to be like, no, she's not like the other girls kind of way, which is not good unto itself. I think
we don't want to make Faye a pick me, but we do want her to have common interests. That's okay.
Yeah, like her. Yeah, exactly. Like she should know about the music and be really excited about it. And that's why I think like her having the writing component of it and actually being a part of the band, but just like underrated because like they were all just taking it as Jimmy's contribution and she is part of Jimmy's contribution. I think that is an interesting way to like make her have more of a thing. So I think that's fucking brilliant, because I think that saves a huge issue that was just like, oh, it's not resolved in the movie that we got. And like most of how I'm coming at it is like, well, if you wanted this movie to be, 10 to 20 minutes longer and wanted to like go with things or to flesh it out just a little bit more, because I think they overtuned the theatrical cut. Like they trimmed it down just a little too much across the board. Like most of my stuff is like, yes, the Tina scenes at the beginning are super helpful for establishing a bunch of things. One of the things they establish for Guy is that he is terrible about his girlfriends. Like not intentionally, because he is super nice, but that he is so like he is pulled in so many directions and has this level of ADHD that I can relate a lot with. Yeah. I mean, his hobbies, his work, his everything, like they all like consume his everything. And so he puts everyone aside. Like when he's with them, they are his sole focus. But when he is focused on something else, that is his sole focus. So establishes why he is both in a relationship with Tina and why it's like a good thing, but also at the same time where the problems on his side are, because like she comes off as much more loving and much more like into it at this point, as opposed to someone who immediately dumps him for his dentist or for her dentist. Pardon me.
Yeah, I that's funny because it never came up, but the "I am Spartacus" line, it's like a punchline that no one gets but him. And that's kind of like a reflection of that, because I love that when they're talking on the phone, he says, "I am Spartacus," and she's like, "Okay," and just hangs up the phone. I love that because, like, literally in the theatrical cut, I cannot remember the extended cut, I don't think anyone ever gets that. Like, even at the very end when they're like, "How'd we get here?" He's just like, I brought you here for I am Spartacus. And he's like, "All right." Like, I really like that.
The extended explains it.
Okay.
Because they show the two of them. So it's actually so Tina not getting it on the phone is actually because she's got her hair curlers already in and she can't hear anything he says. But that's more drawn out in the scene, in the extended cut of it. And in the scene where they're hanging out at his apartment. So we also are reminded that he was able to like have his own place. He wasn't like living with his family at that point. Like while they're making out, they're watching Spartacus. And then apparently it's a thing where he'll like say it. And like that's a turn on for her. So it's like part of their flirtiness. And that's why he says it to her over the phone, because he's trying to invoke that like flirtiness from the earlier scene. But we lose that. And thus it just seems more like like he just keeps on fucking saying he's Spartacus.
I like my version better. That's just a punchline that only he gets. Nerds we do that all the time. We'll say something that only we think is funny. And we're like, if you guys understood, you'd think it's hilarious. So, yeah.
Like sometimes you just have to have like a C and not have to explain to anyone what the A or the B were in that. And I super relate to that as well. So like, sure.
Mm-hmm. I know you do.
So much. There are so many inside jokes that I put into all of our stuff that are just for me. Go listen to the Josie and the Pussycats episode, everyone, please. Mm-hmm. Look at the cover art.
I'm so jealous I wasn't on that episode.
Me too.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we'll have a chance to talk about it at some point. But yeah. So like those kind of scenes are ones that I want. Like the stuff, the extended stuff with the dad isn't really that helpful. I honestly think you can pull very small parts of all these scenes, because I think there was so much like filler that they were like was obviously going to get cut for any theatrical cut that they just put back in. I think, I don't need more of Kevin Pollak. Like that whole scene, like is fine, but like I got it. Like I got who he was. We didn't need more. Cutting the first agent, that like for one thing, that's more of a reshoot than necessary. And I feel like he would still end up having to cover 75% of what he does, because he would still need to get someone to the radio, or like get the song to the radio station, because the radio stations, or like the playing their song, is such an important scene. Like it is their victory. It's the break into two for me, because that's the thing that like really pushes them into being like, yeah, no, we have won. Like we have done like what we set out to do at this level of who we are. We're on the radio now.
Right.
And like everything from that point is them then going and exploring their broader career. But yeah, like the scenes with like Faye and them like practicing in the garage, I think are really good at establishing more of those relationships. That's where we get that like really good shot of Jimmy just looking angrily at Faye after she claims ownership of the one song, or like inspiration of the one song, which sets up him being upset about the engagement thing later. So like those are all good things. Like I want those in there. you just can't do too much because then all of a sudden it's a full hour longer. So it's just a tough balance there. But like I said, it's just polish on this one. Like, I think it's already pretty solid across the board.
Yeah, pretty much. And yeah, I would feel weird about cutting the first manager, but that's kind of what I saw. You could also reduce the Italian restaurant stuff because that did go on for like 3 scenes. Like, that could be reduced to probably 1 scene, maybe. But maybe after they make the album, maybe have the guy ask, "Hey, where can I get your album at the talent show?" And then you only have to really do 1 scene at the Italian restaurant. And you still have Faye selling the records, which I love that scene. I love her sitting there counting money. Like, I love that shot. Yeah, but I agree with you.
Yeah. I just worry about the domino effect because, one, it gives us a lot of good Lenny lines, and it's such a good segue in for a bunch of Lenny stuff that I wouldn't want to lose that, because he actually is a character you could cut down on dramatically and not lose any of the big story points, but he's the humor and he's the gel for the group that's so important. And that's also why I think like good anything that adds to the characters of the band, I think should be in this movie. Like any shot from the extended cut that is about like character beats or good jokes between them or any of that, I think that's really helpful because that's what we're missing in the theatrical cut, to the extent that they do. Like a lot of it's implied, a lot of it is there. It's just not as much as you could get. Yeah. So ultimately, like, I don't have a huge pitch for this movie because I already think that like all the versions that we've gotten of it have been very solid movies unto themselves. Just trying to get it like a little bit closer to that like happy medium between the two, where it's not quite so tight, where we lose out on some of the character moments and all that, but also not so big where it becomes kind of slow at points or scenes feel unnecessary, or it would be an issue for censors. Because I do think one of the reasons why this movie has retained its status in pop culture that it has is that it was a safe movie to be in rotation in houses, on networks, etc. Like, so it is the thing where could the Howie Long scene make it is hard to say for sure. Like, we wish it could,
right.
But would it have been as successful in terms of people just knowing it? Like, it definitely was a movie that we could have on VHS and just like play ad infinitum because my parents thought it was catchy and made them think of their childhoods. And like, they were like, and you kids these days, you don't know, but this movie kind of tells you. Like, so we want to keep that part there. Like, we want to keep it so that like everyone is going to watch it ad infinitum, that the main song still becomes an actual chart topper. It's like, I think it hit number 47 in the real world, which is pretty good for just a tie-in song to a movie. So, you know, pull little bits here and there. And then if we could do more intensive reshoots, trying to deal with Lamar, because I really do like the idea of him being like a Sammy Davis Jr. type figure. I think that's a brilliant one. I don't know about him owning the hotel, if it's going to be like a swanky hotel in like early 1960s LA. Like maybe, but like I don't know where that falls into all the different scenes and like all the and whatnot. But a Sammy Davis Jr. type character definitely could fit, and him just being around would be like just like one of those like celebrities that they found and like they're so fawning over, and it's like, yeah, no, it makes sense. He's at the hotel because he's doing a show or something like that over the next 2 weeks, and so they just keep on bumping into him, and then it doesn't feel so strange or or anything like that.
Yeah, he needs to not be in a position of answering to them. He needs to be helpful, not obligated, and that would make it less awkward.
Yeah, so, especially if he knew the hotel staff, so he could be like, "Bellhop, grab her bag. She needs to go eat some food." Like,
and that's some white guy,
right? Yeah, exactly. Like, make him like very in control of the situation, and I think that then becomes really cool as well.
Yeah,
and not unrealistic because we are directly calling out like real celebrities.
Yeah.
So something like that. So basically, I agree with you both.
Awesome.
Yeah. So I think we kind of knew that that's roughly where we were going to come down on this movie, because we were all like, yeah, no, we're excited about this movie. And the biggest reason I wanted to have this on was so that we could kind of gush about it, like gush about the soundtrack, you know, like live in the moment. It's an excuse to rewatch it, which is not something I often get for movies that I just enjoyed from my childhood that were, pretty good.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I liked rewatching it, and my roommates hadn't seen it, so that helped.
Yeah.
Oh, even better.
It was nice to see a movie from like the past that held up too. Like, because sometimes we rewatch films and I'm like, no, my childhood is now ruined. Why did we watch this?
Yeah.
I thought this was a good movie and I was wrong. But this is good. It's still good.
Yeah. It's like one thing we haven't talked about is the actual budget. It was a fairly modest budget movie and it was a modest success. It was budgeted at 26 million and it made 34.6, which is making your money back plus, but it's not like crossing that like double your budget kind of line that usually Hollywood says is where they actually start making profit. So, moderate success. It opened at number 3. It was never like the number 1 movie in the country. And I honestly think that like the reason it has the status it does is because it was so family friendly and such a nostalgia bait for so many people's parents that it was an easy choice to have at like in the world in the release. It did well, at least in terms of VHS copies that were going out there. And so people just know it. But it was never a huge hit.
I think TV rights, it probably made as much money as it did in box office, like just because it's been everywhere. So yeah, I definitely think that was, with it being such a safe, squeaky clean movie, I definitely think that made it a success as far as just it's easy to market, it's easy to sell. So yeah.
So yeah, it's a good movie and it could be slightly better, but there's no version of it that's bad, and the soundtrack is fantastic, and I really am glad that we got to rewatch it and talk about it and have you on, Keith. So why don't you tell people where they can find you, follow you, and who you are and why we wanted you specifically on for this episode?
Yeah, so the best way to find me at the moment until it burns down is Twitter. You can find me, my Twitter handle is WHI Podcast Keith. You can also find my producer Liz, I mentioned, at WHI Podcast Liz. And I'm going to plug my co-host because I love him, Josue Reads Josue on Twitter. So that's the 3 of us. We have 2 shows together. The first one is a certain POV joint, and that is Jukebox Vertigo. You can find that on Twitter at Jukebox Vertigo. The way this show works is every other week we have a randomized musical category. It could be simply a genre. It could be something really narrow and niche. And what we do is we go around with ourselves and usually some special guests, and we build a playlist based around that category. Be it our most recent episode, which is duets, or our next episode, which is going to be very fun, which is called Sample Size, which is only songs that have been sampled, not songs with samples. So yeah, we've been having a lot of fun doing some research for that, and it's just a blast. We have a really good time. We also have an episode coming up that I'm very excited about that we've only done once, and it's going to be a recurring thing, I think, called Jukebox Roulette, where we randomly roll the category during the show for each entry, and that person has 1 minute to come up with a song while the rest of us talk for a moment.
Oh boy.
And it's so much fun. Like, we did it once and only one of us got stumped once. It wasn't me. So yeah, lots of fun at Jukebox Vertigo on Twitter. You will always announce new episodes on there. Also, I mentioned my co-host Josue. He actually hosts Jukebox Vertigo. He has Twitch at Josue Plays Josue. Every Monday when new episodes come out, he hosts a listening party later that evening on Twitch where he listens to all the songs we added and gives his opinions. And it's a lot of fun. We've been getting like a pretty good sized group lately, just to sit in there talk about music. We ended up staying way too late the last time. So it's a lot of fun. Our other project I want to talk about is We Have Issues. It's our comic book podcast. It's once again me and Josue, where we review what seems to be every comic that comes out every week. You can find that at WHI Podcast on Twitter. And if Hive comes back up where We Have Issues on Hive, that's where my Twitter name, WHI Podcast Keith, comes from. So yeah, so those are my 2 major projects. And I have some collabs coming up with certain POV, but I don't want to plug them yet until I know for certain they're going to happen. So cool.
Yeah, well, I mean, everyone should be checking out both of those shows. As you mentioned, specifically Jukebox Vertigo at this time is a certain POV show. But we love y'all, and we're so happy to be able to engage in these conversations and have you on. And yeah, just you're putting out good work.
Yeah.
I love Case being one of our listeners because he's always sending me messages about what we talked about. and
Well, yeah,
stuff,
especially, yeah.
obscure references no one else gets. And I'm like, thank God someone else got that, because what did I make a reference to?
You made a Christmas Prince reference, and I literally went, ha, Christmas Prince. And then you were like, that's a Christmas Prince reference, but no one's going to get it. And I was like, I got your message.
We've watched The Christmas Prince. We've watched.
Yeah, we did an episode on Christmas. On 2?
We did it on 2, but we ended up talking about all 3 because how can you not?
I was unaware of The Christmas Prince until Jenny Nicholson put out her video about it.
That's such a good video too, and we talked about that video a lot.
And so I was just like, yeah, I need to watch this. And so I went and watched it. I'm like, excellent, 10 out of 10.
I shouldn't be surprised that like a YouTuber with like 1 million plus subscribers like is known by other people, but I do get excited when like some of these ones that I feel are like my niche. Such a weird thing to say.
I absolutely adore her. And I'll give a plug for her. Screw it. Jenny Nicholson on YouTube. Check out her one about the Church Play Cinematic Universe.
It's
one of the
so good.
Things I've ever listened to. It's the fact that there is a scene where Iron Man is being crucified on a girder while singing "Tub Thumping" by Chumbawamba. That's all you need to know. It's amazing. It's the best. So, great. But that's all my plugs. That's everything. And find me on the Certain POV Discord. We have a lot of fun on there. So
yeah. And after that, they should look up Sam. Sam, where can they find you and follow you?
Well, they can occasionally find me on our Discord when I remember it exists. And then they can find me here on Another Pass, which, that's pretty much it, because I have disappeared and you're going to have to hire a replacement because I am riding all the rides in Disneyland. But if you have any complaints about anything I said today, especially if it was about La La Land, because I don't want to hear it because it was terrible and I don't care. I do not care. Please, you can find Case at...
you can find me on Twitter for as long as it still exists at Case Aiken. You can also find me on other social media sites at Case Aiken. As new ones rise and fall. Did you say Hive is down already?
I think it's back up.
They're building the infrastructure.
They better.
Yeah, it was ran by 2 people when we all started it. So that I do have a Mastodon, but like I can't even like explain how I might have more than one Mastodon at this point. I did not intend for that. But if you're worried about that, you can find me at the also the just maddeningly named Instagram handle I have, which is Quetzalcoatl5, because I am both a mythology nerd and a Legion of Superheroes nerd, and didn't think about like branding back in the day when I set up those accounts. That's a tough one. But outside of that, you can find the show on Twitter again, as long as it still exists, at Another Pass. You can find more episodes at certainpov.com or on this feed. Now, at this point, when this episode is dropping, you will have noticed that our output has gone up quite a bit from our old biweekly schedule. And that is because on off weeks, we are putting out Sam and my retrospective on old episodes. So we are doing the same thing we did when we did the proto episodes of Another Pass, the ones that were part of the Certain Point of View podcast show. We are now doing that for all of the old episodes, and there's a bunch of reasons for that. One is that our podcast hosting site, Libsyn, interacts weirdly with some players and limits the number of old episodes you can see at any time. Like if you go to the website, you can find every episode, but like on Pocket Cast, for example, you can only go 100 episodes back. So we wanted to make it so that it was available, but they're also 6 years old at this point. And so we wanted to give an opportunity that there is an additional gain, which is our insight into it. And we can kind of talk about like the strengths and weaknesses and perhaps the audio quality of many of these early episodes of the show. So if you're wondering why every other week there is a show that says Another Pass at a thing, that's us doing our retrospective. So at this point, you'll have heard us talk about Return of the Jedi. You'll have heard us talk about Mallrats. I forget how many of these will have come out at this point, but a couple. So check those out. Check out new episodes of the show. Check us out on Discord, on the slowly burning down Twitter, and then circle back for next time where we will be talking about something great. Sam, what are we going to be talking about next time?
Next time, we'll be talking about Highlander 2, The Quickening. But until then, if you enjoyed this, pass it on.
thanks for listening to Certain Point of View's Another Pass podcast. Don't miss an episode. Just subscribe and review the show on iTunes. Just go to certainpov.com.
Another Pass is a Certain POV production. Our hosts are Sam Alicea and Case Aiken. The show is edited by Matt Storm. Our logo and episode art is by Case Aiken. Our intro theme is by Vin Macri, and our outro theme is by Matt Brogan.
We should just get into the episode.
We should just get into it.
We're basically talking the episode without. I'm gonna stop you all. And
Amazing.
Case, let's get into the episode.
I know. I just wanted to.
When me and Case get together, this is what happens.
Matt, I'm so sorry if this goes off the rails. I will do my best to keep Case on track, but I have a feeling that it's going to be a hard one. Good luck editing.
The Men of Steel episode for Squadron Supreme was down to the wire on getting it to him in time to edit, and it ended up being almost 4 hours long, maybe cracking 4 hours, but under 4 hours on the final cut. We scheduled it, and I had like 3 hours from the time it started to when I was supposed to go see Black Panther, and we were late for the movie because we just went so hard on this. I mean, admittedly, it's a dense book, and I should have realized no, we can't. We went issue by issue, and I was like, no, that was a bad choice. Should not have done that if I wanted it to be under 2 hours.
Yeah.
And so I paid him extra money up front, being like, hey, this is really long and it's tight, and I'm so sorry.
Nice.
Here's a bonus.
I'm glad you did that. Matt, you deserve to be rewarded or compensated for your loss of time.
Yay. Under 2 hours on the recording.
Huzzah.
Yeah, all right.
We did it, Matt. We did it. You're welcome.
CPOV.
CertainPOV.com.